She screamed and dropped the pocket of clothes she wanted to spread. She ran upstairs, heading to her room, but Abeni caught up with her and touched her shoulder. She stood there, very scared and unable to move. Abeni moved closer to her and she whispered in her ears, "Take me home, take me home." Mama Ifeanyi stood there, frozen and paralyzed by shock. Abeni's ghost took possession of her body as she remained frozen. Many years ago, in a small town in Lagos, Nigeria, there lived a woman called Mama Ada. Mama Ada owns a three-story building in the interior part of Lagos. She is a successful business owner with many shops in different Lagos markets. Mama Ada is a no-nonsense landlady who doesn't listen to stories from her tenants when it comes to payment of rent. She would often let her tenants know how much she suffered before being able to build the house. She would give her tenants time to leave the house and when to return at night, and nobody dared go against her rules. Due to this, there is a popular saying around our neighborhood: no one messes with Mama Ada and goes scot-free, especially because she also has four brothers who are lawyers. Whenever Mama Ada wants to rent out any of her apartments, she would give priority to people who have more money to pay, which means she's getting two or three times the normal house rent cost in her neighborhood. A lot of people are falling victim, and when they find out later and confront her, she would tell them to take her to court if they feel like they are being cheated. But the old tenant would advise them to leave the money, or they would lose more money because her lawyer brothers would always defend her. One day, an old tenant had just moved out from one of Mama Ada's apartments and it became vacant. Many people had come for their apartment, but Mama Ada's price was too high. A man named Paul approached her and told her he was interested in the apartment. He was willing to pay two times her charges, and Mama Ada is very happy. She gave the man the necessary forms to fill and he moved in the same day. Paul is a very quiet person who doesn't interact with the neighbors. He keeps to Mama Ada's rules and he always avoids any troubles. She tried many times to start a conversation with him, but he would often pretend to be on his phone and walk away. A month after renting the apartment, Paul came home with a young lady, Abeni, who began to live with him. He met her wandering around the bus stop and she asked him to help her locate her mother, who was married to another man in the city. But after searching for a long time without success, Paul asked her to stay with him until they found her mother. But after weeks of searching without success, Abeni began to live with Paul. The agreement was for her to stay with him until she is able to save enough money for an accommodation or find her mother. She began to think of how to make money, and she spoke to Mama Ada to allow her sell food at the front of the house, and luckily for her, Mama Ada accepted, although she made sure that Abeni paid her what shop renters pay in the neighborhood. Every morning, Abeni would sell delicious jollof rice, beans and yams to school children, and everyone liked her food. Then at night, she would sell bean cake and cornmeal and retire to bed. Sales were booming as school children would queue to buy a delicious jollof rice, and some would even fight just to have a taste of her sumptuous meals. The single men would often queue at night to have a taste of her food after a stressful day at work. As time went on, people around the neighborhood began to suspect that Abeni might have a secret ingredient that makes her food taste special. A lot of people tried to spoil her business, but they were not successful because of the cheerful but secretive nature of Abeni. She would smile and joke around with her customers, but she never gave room to any form of familiarity. So, nobody knows anything about her. One morning, Mama Ada woke up to noises coming from outside her house. She found a group of school pupils waiting in line for Abeni. She was surprised. She had seen Abeni and Paul the previous night, and they told her they were traveling. Abeni had even given her the key to the apartment, telling her she would be back by weekend and she doesn't want to lose the key since Paul would not be around. Why did she not inform her customers? Mama Ada thought aloud, angry that her early morning prayers were interrupted. She told the customers that Abeni would not be available until the weekend, and they grumbled, leaving one by one. 3 days after Paul and Abeni left home, the neighbors began to perceive a foul stench from the apartment. At first, it smelled like a rat. By the fourth day, the odor was unbearable, and Mama Ada instructed some of the men to break down the door. but they were scared of being accused of thefts. So Mama Ada had to document the whole process with her phone's video recorder. As the door was flung open, the scene that met Mama Ada and her tenant was too gory and everyone ran off. Mama Ada stood there with her mouth wide open and her phone fell off from her hands. Abeni's lifeless body lay on the ground with stabs and bruises all over her body. Her hands were tied and her mouth gagged with a white cloth now stained with blood. Mama Ada did not know what to do. She called her lawyer brothers to explain what happened and they quickly involved the police. Abeni's body was evacuated and the forensics experts began their investigation. During questioning, they asked Mama Ada to provide Paul's full information, but when she brought out his file, she found out that he did not include any next of kin or previous address. The money he offered to pay Mama Ada when he wanted to rent the house was her priority. She did not do her due diligence before giving the apartment to Paul. The number on his file was also unreachable, so apprehending Paul would be really challenging. And since none of Abeni's family was known, the case seemed like a hard nut to crack. 7 days after the death of Abeni, the residents of Mama Ada's apartment began to experience some strange occurrences. Very early in the morning, as people prepared to go to work, they would often hear sounds of pots, pans, and spoons where Abeni used to cook before her death. One of the neighbors once heard Abeni asking people to come buy her hot food, but when they reported the case to Mama Ada, she believed they were lying. At night, people would hear knocks on their door, but when they open up, no one will be there. One day, a tenant came back home late at night to find the door locked. He knocked several times, but no one opened. He called his wife, but she was not picking up. When he turned back, he found the lock open and he thanked the person who opened it. He also saw the person enter Paul's apartment. Scared at what he saw, he ran inside his apartment. When he explained what he saw to his wife, she was scared but did not know what to believe. One night, another tenant was making a call at his balcony when he saw someone enter Paul's apartment. He called out to the person, but they did not answer. He had a chilling feeling when the fellow looked back and the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. He saw a glowing red eyes as he rushed back inside and closed his window blinds. None of the tenants was able to sleep well since the death of Abeni, and soon it became very evident that the house is haunted. Footsteps can be heard in the middle of the night, and sometimes screams and cries for help will keep the tenants awake at night. The tenants continued to hear Abeni's night and morning cooking sounds too, and fear continued to rise among them. Some of the tenants even perceive a food aroma, and some people see her wandering in the compound when they look out their window at night. As the event continued to get worse, the tenants began to leave one after the other. Some people had to leave even though their rent were yet to expire and Mama Ada did not refund them. Mama Ada was happy about this because she would be getting new rent from new tenants. Meanwhile, Paul's apartment is still under lock and the police are investigating Abeni's death. 6 months after her death, Mama Ada was becoming impatient. She is not happy that the apartment is unoccupied and she needs to rent it out as soon as possible. But since her property is in Lagos, where there is high housing demand, she rented out all the apartments in less than 1 month, including Paul's apartment. She rented them out cheaply to lure unsuspecting tenants. A female student of a university around the area, Blessing, paid for Paul's apartment. The other apartments were occupied by Mama Ifeanyi, Friday, and some married people with kids. The new tenants know nothing about the reasons for the mysterious event happening in Mama Ada's house. Whenever they complained to her, she would tell them that the sound is coming from the next building. So they did not understand what was going on until one night. Blessing had just returned from lectures. She was stressed out and decided to take some rest. As she laid on a chair, she saw a shiny locket beside her window. She picked up the locket to examine it and she saw two pictures. A picture of a young little girl on one side and a picture of an elderly woman on the other side. She wore the locket and looked at herself in the mirror. The locket looked so beautiful on her and it began to sparkle, and a white light appeared behind her. She turned to look at the light, but found nothing there. But when she turned to look back at the mirror again, Abeni's ghost stood right behind her. She looked angry with her bright red eyes, and Blessing screamed. She strangled her with the locket as she continued to scream. Her neighbors heard the scream and they rushed to find out what was happening, but her door was locked. They called her to her, but she couldn't respond because she was being strangled. Mama Ada, sensing danger, asked them to break down the door, but the door was too strong, as if a force was keeping it locked. A male tenant, Friday, went to check the window to see why the screaming wouldn't stop, and he saw Blessing writhing in pain on the floor as a shiny locket on her neck tightened its grip as if she's being strangled by someone. He saw her body move as if being pulled up by someone. She hung in the air as the locket continued to tighten around her neck. After a while, Friday saw her fall to the ground, hitting her head on the towels. He watched as Blessing tried to talk as she touched her neck. She pointed to a direction in the room, but Friday could not see anything. He went back to the front door and tried to help out by kicking the door, and surprisingly, it flung open. But by the time they got inside, Blessing couldn't breathe well and her neck was bent to one side. Friday checked her neck, but the shiny locket was no longer there. Friday did not understand what just happened, and he began to think that he was hallucinating. Where is the locket? He thought aloud. They rushed Blessing to the hospital, but she died on the way. The tenants were shocked at Blessing's death, barely a week after she moved into the house, and soon they began to pay attention to the events happening around them. People began to ask questions around, but Mama Ada would often dismiss it. One week after Blessing's death, the tenants began to hear sounds from Abeni's cooking pot and spoons and how she would tell people to patronize her. The tenants all came out one day at midnight to find out what was happening, but the noise stopped. They informed Mama Ada, the landlady, but she told them to ignore the sound. The sound may be as a result of Blessing's sudden death. Please stay indoors at night and avoid going out very early, she advised them. And what about me? I have to leave home as early as 4 a.m. You know I work on the island. Mr. John, one of the new tenants, complained. I have given you my warnings. You can do anything you like, Mama Ada affirms as she leaves them standing there. The next day, one of the tenants, a woman known as Mama Ifeanyi, got home one afternoon when no one was around the house. She was taking a nap in her sitting room when she heard a knock on her door. Hello, Mama Ifeanyi. Good afternoon, ma. It was a female voice, but it sounded unfamiliar. Mama Ifeanyi got up to open the door, but found no one there. She went back inside, thinking it her ears playing tricks on her. She continued to nap and had barely closed her eyes when she heard another knock, except that this time it was a loud bang, and the person said, Open the door now, with authority. Mama Ifeanyi was getting scared. She sat on the chair and asked, shivering, Who is there? Who are you? It is Abeni, your neighbor. Please, I need to go home. Take me home, please. I'm suffering here. Abeni said, sobbing. Take you home? Where is your home? Mama Ifeanyi asked, confused. Osho is my home. Take me there, please. Abeni sobs as she continues to beg Mama Ifeanyi to take her home. Mama Ifeanyi woke up suddenly and she realized that she was just dreaming. She did not think much of the dream until she heard a knock on the door and she opened it with sleepy eyes. She heard a soft "Take me home" by the door without seeing anybody, and she rushed back inside and locked her door immediately. She was very scared. When her husband arrived at night, she told him about her experience that afternoon. He shrugged it off and asked her to stop hallucinating, but she replied that she feels a presence whenever she's in a compound, especially at night. Her husband told her to forget whatever dream she had. It's only a dream. After their dinner, he told her that he had a surprise for her. He took her downstairs to show her the new car he had just bought. Mama Ifeanyi was very happy and she jumped up in excitement, hugging her husband. That night, she asked her husband where he got the money to buy the car. because she's aware of the current financial situation. But he replied that a colleague at work sold it for him, so he doesn't have to pay all the money at once. The next day, Mama Ifeanyi woke up earlier than usual to prepare her kids for school and leave home with them because she's scared of what happened the previous day. She put her clothes in the laundry machine and at the same time prepared her children's breakfast and lunch. She removed the clothes when they were ready and she was about to spread them on the clothesline inside the compound. On her way to the clothesline, Abeni walked towards her and she greeted her, but Abeni did not reply. When Mama Ifeanyi turned to look at her, she saw her red glowing eyes. Mama Ifeanyi was shocked. She screamed and dropped the pocket of clothes she wanted to spread. She ran upstairs, heading to her room, but Abeni caught up with her and touched her shoulder. She stood there, very scared and unable to move. Abeni moved closer to her and she whispered in her ears, "Take me home, take me home." Mama Ifeanyi stood there, frozen and paralyzed by shock. Abeni's ghost took possession of her body as she remained frozen. Her husband was ready to go to work and he was surprised to see her looking scared and standing at a spot. "I think your food is ready and the kids are looking for you. Are you done spreading your clothes?" he asked as he moved closer to his wife, but she did not leave the spot. He moved closer to her and tried to touch her, but her body was as cold as ice. He shook her violently, but she remained at the same spot. He began to call for help, and his neighbors came out to help. Her eyes were wide open, but she could not speak or move, so they took her to the hospital. The hospital couldn't do much, as the diagnosis shows she's doing perfectly alright. So they discharged her the next day. She still hasn't spoken, and she has also refused to eat. She only sits at a spot looking at the TV all day. Her mother, who had come to be with her and look after her three kids, would try to talk to her, but Mama Ifeanyi would continue staring at the same spot. At night, when the kids had retired to bed, Mama Ifeanyi's mother sat with her. She began to talk to her and help her remember the good times they shared together. But Mama Ifeanyi stood up suddenly, walking towards the door. She shut the door and faced her mother. "I want to go home. I need to go home now. Take me home," Mama Ifeanyi said with an unfamiliar voice. Then she began to destroy things in the sitting room. Her mother was getting scared. She picked up her phone to call her daughter's husband. "Please come back home quickly. I don't know what is wrong with her." Mama tried to prevent her from further damaging things by holding her hands from behind, but she wiggled free and pushed her away. Mama hit her head on the sofa as she fell to the ground. Mama crawled to the children's room and she locked it from behind. She placed a chair behind the door and sat on it. The children were awake now. She hugged them and began to pray silently. Mama Ifeanyi tried to enter the room, but Mama's thoughtfulness helped prevent her. Her husband arrived at that moment and he started banging on the door. She opened the door for him and he was shocked to see the whole sitting room destroyed. He tried to ask if she was okay, but she choked him on his neck. She lifted him above the ground as he tried to make her stop. "Thief! Liar!" she screamed. She threw him off to a corner of the room and he hit his head on the tiles. Blood gushed out of his head as he lay helpless on the floor. Mama wondered why Mama Ifeanyi would do that to her husband and even call him a thief. She had opened the door when Papa Ifeanyi came in and she saw the whole event. She started screaming for help and Mama Ada heard the commotion. She went upstairs to find out what was happening and she was shocked to see Abeni's ghost on Mama Ifeanyi's face standing before her. Abeni's ghost approached Mama Ada with her rotten legs and glowing eyes and she began to run away. But Abeni caught up with her. "I want to go home. I need to go home. Please let me go home," Abeni's ghost roared. Mama Ifeanyi fell to the ground, exhausted, and Abeni's ghost left her body. The other tenant called to the scene, and Papa Ifeanyi's body was taken to the morgue. Mama Ifeanyi woke up the next day and she cried, knowing her husband was gone. By evening, she went to meet Mama Ada that evening. She asked her, "Who is Abeni?" Mama Ada feigned ignorance at first, but when Mama Ifeanyi threatened her, she began to talk. She explained how Abeni the food seller lived with Paul in her apartment and how her dead body was found. Mama Ifeanyi told her that Abeni's soul was still in the house because where she comes from, their dead bodies are not usually buried outside their home, and also that Abeni's locket is still in that house and they need to find it and bury her with it. Mama Ada became uncomfortable at this point. Mama Ifeanyi continued, Abeni's ghost became angrier because someone stole her locket. She's out on revenge on whoever stole it, and she said she won't stop until she kills every living being in this house. My husband is just the start, Mama Ifeanyi said, sobbing. The landlady consoled Mama Ifeanyi. She told her that she doesn't know anything about the locket and that they have tried everything to find Abeni's parents, but it's all been a dead end. Paul, the person who rented the apartment, is also untraceable. So what do I do? Mama Ada complained. Anyways, find the locket or you won't have peace in this house. Abeni is not gone, and a second comment would be very bad. Mama Ifeanyi warned her landlady. Mama Ifeanyi also tried to warn some of her neighbors about the dangers of remaining in the house, but they did not believe her. With the help of her mother, she packed her things that day and left the house with her kids, crying as she left. She will be staying with her mom in a nearby town until she is able to get an apartment. After she left, Mama Ada called a meeting. She lied to all her tenants that Mama Ifeanyi is mentally unstable and she killed her husband as a result. So, she would advise them to take anything she says with a pinch of salt. A week after the tragic death of Papa Ifeanyi, Friday began to have nightmares. One night, he was sitting in the compound, taking some fresh air, when Abeni sat beside him. She began to cry. She asked Friday to get a locket for her. She said she knows he recognizes it because he saw it when Blessing was dying. Then she told Friday to take her home. When Friday asked her where the locket was, Abeni pointed at an apartment and she said she took it. Friday woke up drenched in his sweat. He looked around and realized he just had a dream. He went into his room as the words of Abeni echoed in his head. He looked at Mama Ada's flat and wondered why she would take Abeni's lockets. The thought of moving out of the house crossed his mind, but he thought of what would happen to the next tenant if he doesn't act fast. The next morning, he approached Mama Ada and told her that her life is in danger and she has 3 days to return Abeni's locket or she will die. As usual, Mama Ada feigned ignorance, but when Friday left, she was fidgeting. Unknown to Friday, when Blessing died, Mama Ada removed the locket from her neck. That was why he did not see the locket around Blessing's neck when he left the window and got back to the room. As Mama Ada sat in her office, she remembered how Papa Ifeanyi met her that night. He saw Mama Ada as she was removing the locket on Blessing's neck before she died, and he approached her later that night. He told her that he saw her taking the locket and that he would advise her to give it to the police. But Mama Ada told him that the locket is worth thousands of dollars, and if he cooperates with her, they can sell the locket and make good money. And Papa Ifeanyi agreed. 2 days later, Mama Ada called Papa Ifeanyi to her office. She gave him an envelope containing a huge sum of money, and he was very happy. She then told him to keep his mouth shut and avoid telling anyone about the locket. This was how Papa Ifeanyi got the money to buy a car. A few days later, Papa Ifeanyi began to have nightmares. He did not tell his wife, but he told Mama Ada. She asked him to go to a spiritualist to avoid seeing Abeni in his dreams, but Papa Ifeanyi told him he doesn't know any spiritualist. Mama Ada has a very strong spiritualist who she introduced to Papa Ifeanyi. She gave them some charms to use every day to prevent them from being attacked by Abeni. This was why Abeni could not attack Mama Ada and Papa Ifeanyi. So she had to take possession of Mama Ifeanyi's body to kill her husband, Papa Ifeanyi. As Friday left, Mama Ada went back to her spiritualist. The powder charm she gave her was almost finished, and she needs to get some more to prevent Abeni's attack. But when she got there, the spiritualist was dead. She went to another herbalist, but he told her to leave immediately. He called her a murderer of an innocent soul. As soon as Mama Ada exhausted her powder, She began to see Abeni in her dreams and everywhere around the compound. She kept asking her to give her back her locket and take her home. One afternoon, she was cooking in the kitchen when she saw Abeni sitting on the kitchen island. Mama Ada screamed and tried to run out of the kitchen, but Abeni shut the door. She walked towards her and began to strangle her. She tried to wriggle free, but Abeni kept strangling her. After a while, she dropped her on the floor and yelled at her to bring her locket and take her body to her home for burial. Mama Ada shook her head affirmatively and she ran out of the kitchen. She quickly called one of her brothers, who sold the locket for her. When her brother arrived, Mama Ada began to ask him if he could retrieve the locket, but he told her that he did not think so. She told him to get back the locket or she would be dead in a few days. Her brother asked her why, but she refused to tell him that she stole the locket from the dead. 2 days later, her brother called to inform her that the locket had been sold to someone else in a very far away state. But Mama Ada was very angry to hear this. She started crying and told him to provide the locket if he loves himself. He shouted at her and asked her why she is that disturbed because of a locket that she could easily replace. But Mama Ada kept crying and telling him that he doesn't know what is at stake. As she dropped the call and went back inside her office, Mama Ada saw Abeni sitting on a chair. She tried to turn back and leave the office, but Abeni's glowing red eyes and screams caused her to close her eyes and ears. Abeni kept screaming for more than 5 minutes, and by the time Mama Ada opened her eyes, her son was sitting on the seat. He asked her why she was screaming, and he tried to touch her, but she ran outside the office without her shoes. The people around were surprised to see her running and screaming, "Ghost! Ghost!" Her son ran after her, but when she looked back, Mama Ada kept seeing Abeni's ghost. This event of seeing Abeni ghosts at odd places continued for days until Mama Ada decided it was time to tell the police what actually happened. Mama Ada went to the police station to confess that she killed Abeni. She recounted what happened the night Abeni and Paul were supposed to travel. This was exactly what happened a few days before the night Abeni died and the night she died. 3 days before the night Abeni was killed, Paul and Abeni were in the sitting room discussing when Paul asked her why she's always wearing a locket. Unknown to them, Mama Ada was at the window listening. Abeni explained to Paul that the locket was passed from generation to generation and that it is worth thousands of dollars. Paul exclaimed and asked her why she hadn't thought of selling it, but she replied that she can't sell it because her mother's picture is there and she also needs to find her. Moreover, it's a family heirloom and selling it isn't an option. Mama Ada, who loved money so much, was already calculating what she could do with the money made from selling the lockets. The next day, Abeni was outside selling her food to customers when Paul arrived from work. He was talking to someone on the phone in his apartment. He asked them if they were interested in buying a rare locket. He sent the pictures to the person, but they told him they were not interested in it. Mama Ada was listening behind the window. She entered when he dropped the call. She told him that she knew someone who is interested in selling the locket. Paul pretended like he did not understand her at first, but when she told him that she heard Bunny telling him about the worth of the locket, Paul calmed down. She told him to get the locket and they would go to the market together to sell it. Paul then informed her that he doesn't know how to convince Abeni to remove the locket from her neck. Mama Ada thought for a while before she told him what to do. So, on the day Paul was traveling with Abeni, he forced her to drop the locket in her drawer. The plan is that he would tell her to give Mama Ada the key to the apartment. So, when he leaves with Abeni, Mama Ada will search the apartment for the locket and steal it before they get back. Everything worked as planned on the day as Abeni dropped the key with Mama Ada. But things took a drastic turn when Abeni told Paul that she needed to use their toilet. Paul tried to convince her to manage until they get to their destination, but Abeni could not hold it any longer. She ran back to the apartment, forgetting that she already left the key with Mama Ada. She was about to turn back to get the key when she observed that the door was open. She rushed in and found Mama Ada searching the room. Paul, who was running after her, entered the sitting room. He started questioning Mama Ada about what she was looking for in his apartment, pretending not to be aware of what was happening. Abeni quickly relieved herself in the toilet as she couldn't hold it any longer. When she was done, she waited in the bathroom to listen as she couldn't hear any of them talking again. She started hearing whispers and she could tell that they are both hiding something from her. When she came out of the toilet, Paul and Mama Ada started their drama again. But Abeni told them that she heard them whispering while she was in the toilet, and they were talking about a locket. She said she knew that Paul was up to something when he asked her to drop the locket in the drawer, but she changed the location before they left home. She told Mama Ada that if she's there for the locket, she would never find it and she wouldn't tell her where it is. She said she would report Mama Ada to the other tenants for entering a flat behind her back and trying to steal her locket. But Paul held her back as she was heading out. He locked the door and pushed her to sit on the chair. Abeni was scared. He pressed his hands on her neck and started asking her where she kept the locket. While Abeni could not speak, when he released her, she told him that the locket is a family heirloom and she also asked to find her mother with it. Mama Ada was getting impatient at this time. She went to the kitchen to bring a sharp knife and she started questioning her to better speak up or she would stab her father one after the other. She begged them to spare her life and she would tell them where she kept the locket. She got up and pretended to be going to the room, but she ran towards the door. They ran after her and dragged her back to her position. Mama Ada was very angry. She stabbed Abeni in the stomach many times as Paul watched in horror. He asked her why she did what she did, and she replied that they can't risk leaving Abeni to escape and exposing them. Paul told her killing Abeni was not necessary. Mama Ada screamed at him and asked him to search the house with her to find the locket. But Paul remained at a point, staring at Abeni's lifeless body in horror. He broke down and sat on the chair. He began to cry. Mama Ada shouted at him and she hit him on the cheek many times to bring him back to present. But he kept sobbing and kept asking her why she killed the innocent girl. After searching for the locket without any success, Mama Ada began to panic. She is scared that Paul may do something irrational with his present condition. So she called one of her brothers to come quickly. When he arrived, he told her that they would have framed Paul for the murder, but there is no way the police would believe them because Paul is sobbing and doesn't look like a murderer. Moreover, they wouldn't want to raise the possibility of him telling the police that Mama Ada killed Abeni. So they decided to keep Paul locked up until they knew what to do with him. By midnight, Mama Ada and her brother dragged him into the vehicle, and the next morning they took him to a police station in another state. Mama Ada's lawyer brother paid a prostitute in that state to accuse Paul of raping her. The prostitute acted well and the police believed her. Without wasting time, Paul was charged to court and the judge sentenced him to 7 years imprisonment with hard labor. After successfully framing Paul and sending him to prison, Mama Ada searched the apartment without finding the locket. She gave up on the search after weeks. But when Blessing rented the apartment months later, she found the locket hidden between the burglary proof and the window in her room. Immediately she found it and wore it. Abeni's ghost appeared and she was actually trying to remove the locket. She did not intend to kill Blessing. That was the locket Friday saw when he went to the window, and Mama Ada seized the opportunity to remove it. Now back to present. The policeman asked Mama Ada if she was able to get the locket back, but she started pointing at the wall. Abeni's ghost stood there, beaming with smiles. She is happy that she will be finally getting justice for her death, but then she needs to find the locket. After her confession, Mama Ada was locked up. She was charged with murder and the judge sentenced her to life imprisonment. Paul was released from the prison, but he couldn't live a normal life. The guilt of being involved in Abeni's death made him depressed and he soon had a mental breakdown. Abeni's ghost also kept appearing to Mama Ada in her sleep and everywhere she went to the prison. After a few months of sleeplessness, Mama Ada had a mental breakdown while in prison and she remained that way for the rest of her life. Meanwhile, Abeni's spirit is still in Paul's apartment and she is still searching for her locket. After Mama Ada's confession and the arrest, the tenants vacated the house, leaving it empty for a very long time. 10 years later, when almost everyone who knows the history of the house was no longer in the vicinity, Mama Ada's brother renovated the house and put it on sale at a very cheap price. The owner of the house moved in and rented out the other apartments to unsuspecting tenants. The movie ends here. This is a Nigerian horror story, and I'm concluding it this way because this is how most horror movies I watch come to an end. You can create the next part in your head. Please don't ask me for part 3. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.